You know what? The real test of your standards isn't how someone treats you. It's whether you abandon yourself to keep that connection. Let me explain exactly what I mean by that because it's something most people don't even realize they're doing it. If you're new here, I am Chris O, the host of PS Younger Self, and this is part 10 of Living by Your Standards series. See, most people think that having standards in relationship means expecting other people to meet them, their expectations, such as partners, dating potentials, friends, and even family members. But a lot of what people call standards are actually expectations. They sound like they should text me back within X amount of time. They should know what I need. They should respond the way I would. They should act the way I imagine they should. They should, they should, they should. And here's the truth. Those should be beliefs are built entirely on your personal assumptions and demands of an outcome. And that is not a standard. That is an expectation. And that is the hard truth that I personally had to learn and realize, and which is why I'm so passionate about sharing this with as many people as possible. And that difference really matters. And once you understand that clear difference, that's when the big shifts happen. Let me get into it further because the real challenge of having standards has absolutely nothing to do with controlling somebody else's behavior, controlling their outcomes, controlling their reaction. And it has everything to do with the quiet ways you start abandoning yourself just to keep a connection. See, no one talks about this. I didn't realize this until I had to go through it myself. And it's not in texting rules or dating advice. It's not what you expect from partners or your friends or, again, your family members. The real work of upholding your standards really happens internally. Really, honestly, that's where it starts. In the moments when guilt, doubt, fear of disappointing somebody else makes you start to shrink, second guess yourself, silence yourself, and override what you already internally know from your own personal truth, just to avoid losing whatever connection that is with whatever person. See, self-abandonment doesn't show up in this dramatic way. It's actually really quiet. It's in the moments where your body starts to say one thing, because that's the intuitive truth, but then you start to talk yourself out of listening to that intuitive truth. And I really speak of this from experience because I lived it. As I mentioned, it's not some theory that I read about somewhere. And I became really passionate about this because I had to take accountability for a painful pattern in my own life, and specifically in romantic relationships. For years, I was leading with expectations, not standards with men. The invisible should be beliefs about how they should respond to me, how they should communicate, how they should show their care, how they should show up, how they should, and how they should and should. And two specific men I truly love both said this to me. Very, very, very different men, about 15 years apart. I love you, but it always seems like it's never enough. And when I realized this, when I saw that pattern, realized it wasn't a blame. It was a mirror. It really forced me to look at the pressure I didn't realize I was creating on the other person. And this story isn't all about self-blame at all. It's about pattern recognition. And once I became self-aware, and developing that self-awareness and taking accountability, every time I made a bid for connection and it wasn't met for whatever reason, they were tired, they were etc. It doesn't matter. I would get anxious, not because I was needy or too much, but because the old part of me still feared being too much. And that was my own internal fear. And that's when I learned and realized that self-abandonment actually feels like. That's what it actually feels like. It's not, again, dramatic. It's really subtle. It's quiet. Sometimes, many times it goes unnoticed. It's the moment when you truly disconnect with your internal truth just to preserve a connection with somebody else. And that's the real wound, isn't it? And I know most people don't even realize they're doing it, because I didn't realize I was doing it for years in different relationships, and not even in a romantic relationship. It was definitely in friendships as well. We abandon in ways that look small on the surface, but just like any compound effect, downplaying what you actually need, pretending something didn't matter or didn't hurt, rationalizing somebody else's behavior, swallowing your own truth just to keep the peace, shrinking yourself and your needs just because you don't want to appear too much or too needy, or overriding your own intuition to avoid conflict, and choosing harmony over real honesty. And every time those moments, again, like the compound effect, starts to chip away at your own self-truth until you no longer recognize yourself in a relationship. And that's how patterns repeat. And I want to take a moment now to really talk about why this happens, because self-abandonment is not a personal flaw. There is nothing wrong with you. And there was nothing inherently wrong with me. It's just a psychological pattern that we are not aware of. We are not conscious of. For many of us, abandoning ourselves was something we learned before adulthood. Childhood, it was a survival mechanism. Some of us may have grown up in environments where connection was conditional, where love or approval or stability depended on being pleasant or undemanding or agreeable. That was certainly in my childhood and family growing up with very, very traditional Korean values and expectations. So we learn to shapeshift and adjust to everybody else's expectations. And we learn to prioritize keeping the relationship over voicing a truth. Some of us live around that emotional volatility like a parent or caregiver who is unpredictable. So our nervous system learns this and honestly starts to equate it with danger, because that's what's known, and silence feels like it's a way to stay safe. And some of us will have internalized it as a shame early on, believing that our needs are too much, and certainly was the case for me, that our emotions are inconvenient or our desires are burdensome. It's too much for someone, our parent, etc. And we learn to make ourselves small and not voice ourselves just to feel love, just to keep that connection and feel wanted and desired. And others become emotionally hyper responsible for everybody else's needs instead of their own. So we become the peacekeepers, we become the caregivers, or, the term that we hear all the time, like people pleasers, at the expense of our own needs and internal truth. And the part that most people don't realize is that self-abandonment feels familiar. because it feels like home to our nervous system. It's just basically what is predictable. Our body, our nervous system is operating on what feels safe because what is predictable. Our brain chooses familiarity over unknown every single time. And so, back to standards. When you start to raise those standards and you start to voicing your needs and upholding boundaries, trusting your intuition, your inner voice, your nervous system reacts because it's unfamiliar. Not because your standards are wrong, but because that self-loyalty, self-trust is a whole new pattern it has not programmed and recognized. Your nervous system is just isn't trying to sabotage you. That's not its goal. It's actually trying to protect you at all costs based on old pattern, outdated definitions of safety, because self-loyalty is new. It's unknown. This is why raising your standards isn't just, I believe, a behavioral shift. It truly is something deeper and existential. It's an identity shift. When you stop abandoning yourself, you're not just chasing what you are willing to tolerate anymore. You're starting to change who you are and how you show up in different relational dynamics. Most of us were praised our entire lives for being flexible, for being accommodating, understanding, adaptable, or maybe even low maintenance. We become the one who adjusts, who absorbs, who softens, the one who makes space for others, even if there's nothing left for us. So when you stop abandoning yourself, you are disrupting an identity of yours shaped by everybody else's expectations and standards on you that you've programmed into your own nervous system that you've carried for years. And you're shifting from connecting at any cost to keep it alive to connection that doesn't cost you your own self. From needing reassurance, validation, to trusting your own emotional truth. From shrinking and minimizing to be palatable for somebody else, to expanding honestly to be the phrase that's very often overused, but your authentic self. And this is why it feels uncomfortable. It's not at all because you're asking too much. It's because, again, your body is just learning to reprogram itself to what self-loyalty really means and what it really means to be safe. This is the identity that you start to step into when you raise those standards and uphold them. The woman who can hold her own truth without the fear of losing a connection. The woman who doesn't negotiate her own self-worth. The woman who loves without abandoning herself. And once you shift that identity, you can't go back. Why would you? So here's a few grounding practices that I want to share with you right now. They are relational standards that you can adjust in your own words and use it as inspiration to craft your own relational standards. But what? I honor the first signal my body gives me because intuition is deeply intelligent. Ignoring it is the first step toward losing yourself. 2, I don't shrink to maintain harmony. If peace requires silence or overriding my truth, it's not peace, it's self-erasure. Number 3, I don't justify inconsistent or bad behavior. Patterns reveal truth. Explanations reveal stories. 4, I express my personal needs with clarity without apology. Your needs are not demands. They are just data about your own emotional landscape. And number 5, I don't trade my own personal values for temporary closeness. If intimacy requires self-abandonment, it's not intimacy. It's just performance. And lastly, 6, I stay loyal to myself even when fear of losing the connection is loud. That hits hard. That is a moment your identity starts to expand. That is a moment when you start to rewire old patterns. And that is a moment you build self-trust that you have always deserved and deserve now. So if you are navigating relationships with high standards and you are starting to uphold them across all relational dynamics, I want you to remember this. The relationship is not the test. It never is. Your self-loyalty is. Because if you have to betray yourself to stay in any dynamic, in any relationship, you're already losing. You're losing something far more valuable than that connection, which is basically your own personal truth. So if this episode resonated with you, I would love to invite you to watch episode 6 in the series. It's one of the most important episodes in the Living by Your Standards series, and it will deepen the thinking around self-loyalty and how to cultivate that in every relationship that you move through. The real test of your standards isn't how someone treats you. Again, it's not at all. It's whether you choose to abandon yourself to keep that connection. I really want to reinforce that. And so stick around. I will link to that episode here so you can watch it. And if there's something specific that resonated with you in this episode, I would love to hear what stood out for you most, what really connected and resonated with you in regards to raising your standards in different relationships. And thank you. Thank you so much for spending your time with me. It truly means a lot to me. And I look forward to seeing you again next time.